what I see is that a lot of times people simply just want to represent their own people. They seek to, it's not just about like what you think is most effective or whatever, but a lot of it I think is just people want to represent their own. So meaning, yes, we are all human, and that's the spiritual way. We're just all human beings. But the West, they love to separate people into little categories. So they'll say like, okay, it's be like, oh, what are what are you? Where are you from? And then if you say, oh, I'm from planet Earth, they'll be like, what? I mean, like, no, where are you from? They'll be like, well, I'm a human being. Well, but where are you from? They'll just keep asking and asking until you end up saying, well, my parents were born in China and Hong Kong. So then they'll be like, oh, so you're Chinese. So that's what they'll say, like, you're Chinese, you're African, you're white, you're Caucasian, you're Hispanic, you're Mexican, you're Puerto Rican, you're Japanese, you're Thai. They love to just separate people into little categories. And because of that, it frames us to think a certain way. So what I'm saying is that, growing up, living here, being born here in America, I was separated from my roots. So my roots are in Hong Kong, in China. That's where my parents are from. But they immigrated here and I was born here, and then I ended up becoming separated from my roots. So I was born and raised to be American. Even though I look Chinese, like I was born in America and I was raised in this culture and going through all this stuff, So my roots is hidden away, and it's all inside of me, but it's been suppressed. So after realizing this and discovering that I had to connect to the other side of me, to my roots, and getting into the martial arts, I started to study the Chinese culture a lot more, and then I started to really understand it and learn to live it and express it. And there's so much to study that is just unbelievable. I mean, I still can barely speak it, and I can't read or write it. There's so much about the history that I don't know of, and I'm mainly on the philosophy. That's my biggest interest, and that's what I study a lot. But there's just so much more that I will never be able to learn enough. So living in America, I already have the American way, because I live here and it's everywhere. But the other side of me, the Chinese side, I had to actively pursue and learn about it. Now, when it comes to other cultures, like the Japanese culture, for example, Japanese would be represented by karate, right? Chinese would be represented by wushu or kung fu. And then you got taekwondo that would represent Korea. Okay, so every country in the East that's developed something that's pretty authentic to their ways in military or in martial arts, they'll have their promotion of that way. So meaning, if I have a Chinese background, I wouldn't really be, it'd be kind of silly for me to kind of practice and train in karate and promoting the Japanese way when I barely even know my way or my original way. So I should be, mainly I would be promoting my way, learn my way before, the Chinese way, before I even learn about the Japanese way. So meaning, I would learn about the Chinese way first, and I still have so much more to learn. So I'll pretty much be always here learning about the Chinese culture and about kung fu and wushu. So a Japanese person would be kind of silly for them to promote kung fu when he's Japanese. Then he's going to promote karate, because that comes from the Japanese way. And then a Korean person, even though there might be like some very effective techniques in other styles or whatever, they're gonna end up usually promoting their way, which is Taekwondo. You know, so it's just like they just want to represent their own, and I see that, you know, and it's just, it's not that I'm not open to other ways, or that other people shouldn't be open to other ways, but I'm just saying that people should learn their own before they start learning about others. So you should learn about your own culture before you learn somebody else's culture, because if you don't even know your own culture, that's the root. So meaning when I was born here, I didn't even have the roots. I didn't even know about my own culture, like intellectually. I mean, like my parents were like just raising me without like saying this, this, and this, but like intellectually I didn't really understand it until I sought for it. So like I got like the American culture, or if you even want to call it that, but the American way, society's way, Americans way, and then I had to get close to my own way. And then slowly I started to study other ways, like the Japanese way, and that's where Zen comes from. Actually, it's a Japanese word for meditation, and a lot of the ideas from Japan were borrowed from China anyway. So all the ideas from Japan are pretty much coincide a lot with the Chinese way anyway. Same thing with India. So Japan, India, and China, they're all like intertwined. So all very similar, you know, especially when it comes to the spirit. You know, they all like respect and highly value like Buddha's teachings. So, but what I'm saying is you gotta get your own way, and then you can start branching off and start studying the other ways. But really, when it comes back to claiming something, like it ends up being people will claim their own. You know, like the Koreans they'll claim Taekwondo, the Japanese will claim karate, the Chinese will claim wushu or kung fu. You know, so Jackie Chan is come from China, he's claiming kung fu. Bruce Lee come from China, claiming kung fu. All right, but you know he ended up calling it Jeet Kune Do later, but Jeet Kune Do is from Chinese words too. So he ends up promoting kung fu, Chinese martial arts or whatever. All right, and then like everybody's promoting their own. Now when it comes to the West, they don't know martial arts. They don't. The martial arts doesn't come from the West. So when you got like a Caucasian person or whatever, or a person that's come from the West, all they know is about like sport and combat sport. So you got like the blacks, Hispanics, and Caucasians dominating the boxing realm, you know, and the wrestling. Like they know about boxing, wrestling, but they don't know about the martial arts. Alright, so they're claiming just the sport. They'll claim boxing. You got a lot of blacks that will claim boxing, a lot of whites that will claim boxing, a lot of Hispanics that will claim boxing. But like they didn't really create any art. It's not a martial art. They just created a game with rules. Right? So there's no culture behind it. There's no spirit behind it. It's just a game with rules. Okay, so when it comes to Westerner, a black, white, or you know even Hispanic, they don't have a martial art foundation that comes from the East. So they gotta train with somebody from the East in order to get close to the real martial art and to the culture and to the spirit. So you might have a Caucasian that claims Kung Fu, or a black that claims Kung Fu, or a Hispanic that claims Taekwondo. But that's only because their own hasn't created a martial art. You know, their own people, the Hispanics haven't created a martial art. The whites, the Caucasians they didn't create a martial art. The blacks didn't create a martial art. You know, they may have created other things, but they didn't create the martial art. So the martial art comes from the East, and mainly it comes back to China, and then Japan got theirs off of China, and then they call it karate. All right, so a lot of this stuff, I mean, the martial arts came from the East. The culture comes from there. The spirit comes from there. And then when you come from the West and you want to practice martial art, you're gonna be claiming something from the East. If you don't claim it from the East, and you're just practicing a sport, a combat sport, you're not practicing martial art. You're just a boxer, all right? Or you're just even Muay Thai boxing is from Thailand. So they just have that as a sport, but at the same time, they try to integrate the spirit into that sport, into that brutal sport. But America is just like, it's just like boxing and wrestling and pro wrestling, you know. So that's pretty much what it is, that people are just claiming their own. And it's not even about like, you know, what's more effective and what's not. It's just like when it comes to certain countries, they'll have like their representation of their specific art, you know. They'll just claim something just to promote that country, you know. And you may be very effective in like a lot of different techniques, but when it boils down to it, you end up claiming where you came from. All right, but when you come into a unique situation, like in my case or even Bruce Lee's case, where you're in between the East and the West, you're American and you're Chinese, so you're like West and East, then it's like you're like, you have both. It's like you end up getting a boxing and Chinese martial arts, you know, like, and then you combine the two, and then you kind of get, you interpret it for them, each side to understand, and then you pretty much intertwine them, and then it's like, you know, it's bringing together the yin yang in a way. So the West is all about the competition, the sport, and then the East is about the art, the self-expression, the creativity. All right. So when you intertwine both, then you pretty much have like an artist that's very athletic and capable in what he does, but there's a sense of gentleness and softness to it, combined with the hardness. And essentially that's what martial art in its totality is supposed to be. But it's hard for people to understand. It's hard for the people from the West to understand the ways of the East, and it may be hard for the East to understand the ways of the West, you know. But when you learn about both cultures, then you can bridge the gap. So if you're from China and you know all about the Chinese culture, if you study the West, you can benefit a lot. If you're a Westerner and you come from America and you know all about the Western ways, and then you study the East, then you can benefit like so much, because now you're combining the best of both worlds, and then you turn it into one world. Instead of like dividing both sides, you intertwine it and you bring it all together. So, you know, that's pretty much what it is, dude. That's the way I see it. A lot of people, depending on their background, their culture, they'll claim according to that. But what I'm trying to do is, I don't want to claim Chinese martial arts. I don't want to claim like something that divides people. So I like to just claim like martial arts, you know. And then now I call it Zen martial arts. But even though I don't want to like create something that divides people, I still call it Freddie's Modern Kung Fu. But you know, I use that because it comes from my culture too. But it feels like Freddie's self-defense, it doesn't sound, it's not something that ends up becoming any spirit behind it, because self-defense is just purely self-defense. There's no spirituality in it. And that's why when you claim Kung Fu, it's a lot more spiritual, and it goes back to the roots a lot more than if you just claim self-defense. So even though I don't like to divide things, at the same time, the real martial art comes from the East. So if you want to teach the real martial arts, you're going to have to claim something from the East. Alright? So claiming Kung Fu, there's spirit. You claim Taekwondo, there's spirit. If you claim like, you know, anything from the East, like Keto, whatever, there's some spirit. But once you start claiming the West, you say like self-defense, boxing, kickboxing, you know, wrestling, that's all just a sport. There's no spirit. It's not a martial art. In order to get martial art, you got to go to the East, and you got to start claiming that, and start learning about the culture, start learning about the ways, start learning about the philosophies, and then that becomes a martial art.